Why take when you can be given? The names have been changed to protect the innocent and cover for the guilty. For him. Sonia knew she had been keeping to herself far too much in recent years, thus some mingling was desperately needed. As the rail car left the stop before hers, decided that upon getting ready to dine remotely then head out for the evening. Realizing even if someone to bump uglies with wasn't found, the human interaction away from work along within a different environment would do her good. The computer only provided so much. When the train came to a stop, quickly disembarked, then negotiated home to hurriedly bathe and ready herself finally on the street by 7:30. Headed for a local restaurant, after taking time eating proceeded to favorite hot spot. Upon arriving, then going through the door and moving off to the right, chose a slightly elevated position so better observation of the bar was possible just as the hour hand selected 1000. Because of the earliness of the hour, the chance had not been utilized to take stock of the patrons, but after finally settling was seized upon. Which led to being pleasantly surprised when her gaze singled out a chap seen around a few times, which for the most part was attractive but was usually dressed nondescript, along with being accompanied by a female companion or a decent-sized group with another male or two mixed in, but the accompanying party was never the same any time they had been observed, nor were the women on his arm. The times it was only a twosome. Finishing scanning the room while nursing her drink, found focus and contemplation returning to this fellow. The environment and feel of bass from the sound system invigorated her, along with him being a curious subject as well as a good focal point in the slowness of the early night. While being watched, he started to scan the room, then suddenly their eyes met, which she responded to by quickly averting her gaze, but immediately began to chastise herself. After all, what was the purpose of this excursion? So she quickly returned her focus, but he was no longer looking, having returned to staring at the drink held resting on the table in front of him. Now really mad at herself, not only for being so chicken but also for the missed opportunity. There was something about his composure and visible self-assurance that was exciting, plus he was appealing as well as lip-lickingly appetizing, so there was definitely far more to gain than lose also. Doubted there would be a more savory option if the choice was made to wait all night, accompanied with this one presenting itself early, thus leaving a lot more time to enjoy the company and interaction, plus the mere thought of a possibility for coupling set her loins ablaze. This whole time her eyes had been locked on him, and then noticed he was scanning the room again, so decided if the chance arose to stand her ground, which came an instant later as once more their eyes fell upon each other, but unlike last time was not broken because Sonia did not turn away this time. Then while holding his gaze, pulled out lip gloss to unscrew the lid and trace the applicator across the surface of her mouth, next flashing a broad moist-lipped smile, then waited upon his response. When none came, felt very disappointed, and even though his eyes still observed her position, looked away to scan the bar again, then lowered her focus to the drink in her hand as she contemplated the nuances of what had just transpired, then felt herself begin to get angry as she thought, how dare he ignore me, how dare he not respond, he does not even have the courtesy to smile back, who does he think he is? What, is he too good for me? Maybe he is waiting for someone. I have seen him with brunettes before, so maybe I am just not attractive. Has he decided I am not his type? Maybe someone here is more appealing. Am I fat? Do I have something in my teeth? Does he want to be alone? Is my makeup smudged? Suddenly she felt the need to powder her nose. Downing her last mouthful off, she went, not giving him the slightest glance while strutting across the floor. Heading straight to the mirror but finding nothing out of place, then freshening up before using the toilet to excrete some fluids while spending time considering what's wrong with her. Heading back towards the bar, now no longer feeling like drinking to get intoxicated, however still planning to stay out for a while. Upon getting to the bar, ordered a soft drink before returning to her table. After being seated and getting comfortable, looked up to scan the room only to catch his eyes upon her once more, but was scanning so did not linger and continued to observe the entirety of the bar. When finished, looked back to his location only to find him observing, which was responded to by locking eyes with him, then waiting for a reaction. Meanwhile, her mind started to whirl. Why is he looking at me again? Why does he not react? Is he playing with me? Why has he not looked away? Does he find me attractive? Wonder what he is like in bed. Which incited a stirring in her midsection. If he's not going to approach me, the only way to get answers is to approach him. After coming out of her dazed contemplation, found him still watching, to which she responded by staring back at him as she sipped her drink while keeping their eyes locked on each other for the next few minutes. Holy, does he even blink? Deciding that was enough of this, she got up and made her way to the table he occupied. Upon reaching it, said, "Hi, would you like me to keep you company?" To which was replied, "I do not know you. You are good to look at from afar, but I do not know what it's like to experience you up close." Claiming, "I am always a pleasure." She plopped herself down at the table and took a drink from her glass. While watching him over the rim as she peered at him on the opposite side. He was now even more impressive up close, and the fact he had not shifted or changed demeanor in any way really impressed her. Then she swung her right leg to the outside of her chair and bent it to position it on its tippy toes while situating it on the floor farther back than her shoulder as she proceeded to bounce it up and down, also wiggle back and forth impatiently in what some would refer to as something akin to unconscious leg shaking or foot tapping without the actual tapping. After finishing her sip, she said, "Are you waiting for someone?" "Nope, no company tonight." "Then why did you not respond when I smiled?" "First, the smile could have been just friendly and did not require one. Second, if it was an invitation I did not know what to and if I could oblige. Third, you were drinking and it is not my way to interact with intoxicated females. Fourth, maybe what I seek would show up, but then you came over to my table, so maybe it has. It appears you regulate your drinking or have quit already. I had just one and did not feel like another. What is your name?" "Sonia." "Hello Sonia, I am that. I am glad you came over. I was already thinking that maybe I need to do things differently, and why do I have to get everything all at once? Maybe your company is just perfect for tonight and just the change I need." "Change? What's that supposed to mean? Did you just break up?" "Nothing like that. Maybe I do not need to carry the whole load at one time. Too much of society is ruled by anxiety and instant gratification instead of savoring each new instance and moment, plus you are something new and do experienced. I do not have to fill the bucket full the first trip. Why do I have to get it done all at once and bear all the extra weight unnecessarily? Besides, when you fill your soup bowl to full, all you end up doing is spilling some of it. What's that supposed to mean? Why do I have to needlessly burden myself with the weight of the whole task at one time? Plus, when you take on too much, all you end up doing is losing what you made the extra effort for. Is there a wife and 3 kids waiting for you at home? No, and maybe an evening of titillating conversation would be more rewarding than an evening of titillating physical interaction. Oh, so now you're going to seduce me. Seducing you would not be hard and would only take 5 minutes, it's the getting to know you and who you are that takes time. How arrogant of him, he thinks he can seduce me in 5 minutes, I'd like to see him try. You think you can seduce me in 5 minutes, I would love to see this and hope you enjoy failing. With all the confidence in the world he replied. Failing. I can do it without even trying. Oh really, without even trying, this I have got to see. The reality is I do not have to do a thing. What's your email address? She tells him it's sonia.claire@husgmail.com. He types into his phone briefly and then looks to her, who pulls out hers and finds a notice she has received a new message. Upon opening, discovers it also has a download attached which is far too large to be a virus, but she's not worried anyways and downloads it quickly to her BlackBerry. As she prepares to open what looks to be a video file, then notices the thumbnail appears to be a woman bent over backwards screaming in a very provocative manner, and right away is thinking, oh great, another male who thinks that porn will entice, excite and seduce a female into laying at his feet begging to be his sex slave. Feeling a little disappointed, she glanced at the length, which is only 2.5 minutes, and realizes she has not got anything to lose. There will still be the rest of the night. Clicking on play and waiting the couple seconds while it buffers, but as the images start to splash before her eyes, is surprised. It is not a movie. It is a collection of images folding from one into the next, and there is no nudity, just images and the odd word passing by to the sound of music, but it is hard to hear over the house system, so she tries to focus on the images. Finally, after watching it for a little while, gets some of what was expected when originally thinking of what was to come. Then it went back to other images and words. Finally it was over, and all she could think was, what did he expect that to do? Is he ever in for a disappointment? She put her phone down as she said, "What was that supposed to do?" while her eyes raised to look his way, and as they began to focus onto his face there was a slight firming and tightening in her region of insatiable hunger, then realized that she was also starting to get slick and as unnerving as it was. It was also very exciting. That was an icebreaker as well as supposed to make you relaxed and easier to talk to, plus it will also reveal what your interests are and what you notice. Feeling a little uneasy along with discomforted, she averted her gaze while taking another drink from her glass. "But you do not know me, maybe I was already easy to talk to." True, but upon first encounters, there is the strangeness and the social anxiety which will have been softened now, and besides you asked, I was just obliging. Obliging, ha, you were supposed to seduce me. My 5 minutes is not up yet, besides your posture and energy has already changed, plus I would not want to push it too far too fast. Like I said, I need to do things different. Now you are not going to seduce me. Ha ha, from this I'd like to see to now you are not going to. I would say I already have, even if you are not willing to admit your disappointed tone. Surely you cannot think that little picture collection has seduced me into being mad for you and that I will throw myself at you or your feet. Are you sure you want to go down this path and have this discussion? Yes. You can embarrass yourself if you want. Embarrass, so you would deny your excitement, hunger, and arousal. Yes, there isn't any. Ha ha ha, there must be something, some aroused urges and lust going on. No, none. Wow, you must really have a hard time with things. Hard time. Yeah, I can smell that scent wafting from somewhere and that has to do with something. Immediately she regretted her decision to wear a skirt that night as she realized her wetness had grown increasingly and was soaking the front of her panties along with it creeping down her ass. Also, having returned to staring at him, which had escalated the firming along with tightening in her over-eager pleasure passage, then progressed to quivers and churning along with now as she became conscious of it, could feel her whole body flush and start to throb with need and craving, and thought her feminine phallus was now engorged and pulsating for some much-needed attention. Now truly feeling discomforted by the uninvited response accompanied by her body's own betrayal along with these overwhelming feelings, but the lust countered it and at this point was greatly outweighing it, which she was sure was now accompanied by 5,000 different shades of red. Fine, I am a little excited, but you showed me erotic images and said you were going to seduce me, so it's natural for my body to be responsive along with anticipatory. The question becomes, what are you going to do about it? First, it was you that brought up seducing, and what do you mean do about it? Yes, the part that comes after the seducing, and I was just clarifying what options you were presenting so I could decide if I needed to seek a better possibility. Remember I said, are you sure you want to go down this path? I am ready for change. Maybe I do not need to get everything at once and I do not interact with intoxicated girls. Yes. Also I said titillating conversation, which does not indicate physical interaction. So you are left in this state, fired up, having to go home to deal with it by yourself, but the whole time aching for me to abate your wants and needs. At this, she felt sad and knew she did not want him to leave or to be alone, instead wanting to feel his touch, kiss, hot breath on her naked flesh, accompanied by the pleasure it would bring along with the heat of his body pressing up against her. Does this mean that you are saying you do not want to be my naked wrestling instructor? I am saying I am not planning on it for tonight, but would probably be inclined for naked twister in the future when the time was right. When would the time be right? Sometime when you have not been drinking and are ready. I only had one. He just smiled back at her, and she admitted to herself about now being seduced along with longing for him greatly, and wondered if she might be throwing herself at him or at his feet. When the mental image of her at his feet looking up begging him for sex entered her mind, she found it very arousing and surprisingly stimulating, which just frustrated her more. Feeling her uncertainty slip away, replaced by severe appetite and insatiability, she hit her final resolve. Did you plan to do this to me? It was you who presented yourself to me and created the situation, then you asked me to seduce you. I just obliged. I saw you looking me over as I approached. I was looking to find the end of your left arm and if it had a ring. First arching her back a little to thrust out her chest, then with palm up motioned her hand down her side from chest to hip as the fingertips pointed in at her ribs through to midsection, indicating where to direct the focus. Don't you want some of this? You have been drinking and that's a muscle relaxat. Then what now? We continue as we have till we decide to or have to go. She understood have to go, but what would decide to apply to if we decided to go? Where would we choose to go? There are many possibilities, but what would interest us? Seeing as we are getting acquainted, would you like to see my place and what you can learn about me there while you finish off the rest of your 5 minutes of seducing? Sure, we can do that. I imagine you are just as entertaining no matter where we are, and I can see and learn more, but I think we have already covered the fact there is no need to seduce you further. They finished their drinks in short order, then gathered themselves to head out the door, Instead of grabbing a cab they decided to walk, casually strolling until reaching her place as the clock approached 12 a.m. and after a quick tour had them sitting on the couch. 5 minutes later she joined him, then pivoted, placing her legs across his lap. Now finding it very intriguing that attention stayed on him and didn't want to lose him from her focus. She could understand why the girls lined up for him, also figured it had to do with the excitement and stirrings she got while doing it, but wasn't totally sure what it was caused by. Then wondered would it intensify or decrease after they had sex, which only added to her horniness and carnal hunger, because now she wanted to know how to get him to perform his half of the interaction. Plus it also fueled her curiosity along with wonder about the possibility would it quench her insatiable appetite for some man meat, and then the thought struck her, was he staying or would he want to leave soon? How long can you stay? Would you like to spend the night so you can keep me company tomorrow? I would like that, but I have other requirements right now and must go home. When can we get together again? I would enjoy seeing you tomorrow, but do not know your wishes, wants or schedule or how hours overlap, so we'll just play it by ear. If you spend the night we can hang out tomorrow. I have things I must attend to tomorrow and might have a hard time getting proper rest in a strange place, so no sense throwing myself off when I can be patient and do it another time, which will not be interfering, along with more rewarding for all. They enjoyed each other's companionship and took pleasure in answering each other's questions until he informed her he had to go. As they walked to the door it took all her composure to not throw herself at him or demand he stay. They discussed the next day and he said he would call after 12 p.m. then discuss getting together and what they would do. They said their goodbyes, but while watching his back disappear out the door felt about to burst. Then when the door closed, her heart sank as it was overcome with disbelief. The fact he had left just throttled her then to feel so empty. Alone along with unfulfilled had just compounded it all. Then she was overcome with the urge to rush out the door after him, but when she made her way to the window he was nowhere to be seen on the street below. After realizing she still hungered to sink her teeth into that and chew on any piece of him she could get, concluded the need of a hot bath or shower to wind down, headed for the bathroom and afterwards climbed into bed, but due to tossing and turning for a prolonged period decided was not fully soothed yet, and found her mind drifting back to that, which then led to the contemplation of potential and possibilities, along with the question of why did he leave. Maybe she had been too pushy. What would happen when she seen him next? Would he alleviate her quenched thirst and found her arousal start to grow again, and her thinking went right to having sex with that, feeling his touch, having him stimulate her, then feeling his firm manhood force its way between her folds. She found her hand sliding down, and to her surprise she was already soaked and so sensitive to the touch that she was unable to stop herself. Within seconds her fingers found their way inside and then had her hips pivoting forward and back again, helping force them deeper inside her and add into the stimulation. There was no slow and gentle working up to it. The gentle arousal and awakening of the sexual senses along with the sexual nervous system. Everything was already well past that, and once they started going into her they needed to find their way in as deep as they possibly could, but then she found that they needed to go deeper, so she withdrew them and again thrust deeply with her hips rocking forward to force them deeper. Her body kept this up for some time and was very invigorated plus stimulated, because of which she had her feet planted and was lifting her ass while thrusting her hips forward along with arching her back and rolling onto the top of her head while rolling it back, but was nearing exhaustion with no release forthcoming no matter how much it felt like it was coming with the next attempt. Trying a few more times but to no avail, then collapsing due to overexertion, having laid there for 10 seconds when her mind seeking release brought forth the image of the lover in her bedside table. Never being one to rely on such things and having only used it a couple of times, now lunged to get the drawer open and grope in the gloom to find the rubber phallus. Upon finding it, quickly positioned herself and started forcing it deep within. 'Twas not overly large, at about 5 inches around and 7 inches long, which was now starting to get covered with her ample lubrication, helping it slide in deeper easier, and it was feeling oh so rewarding. Right now, as she plunged it into herself, feeling it begin to get wetter as she slid it in and out, yes, this felt much better and could easily switch hands. Feeling herself warming back up and her hips wanting to start pushing down onto the new stimulator just as they had been with her fingers, within seconds was ass in the air again with feet planted. Flat foot on the bed and thrusting hips with all her might against her wrist as it was crashing into her naughty nib, while her fist held onto her lover and drove it deep within her, and this new stimulator was driving her mad within seconds. It was going deeper than her fingers had reached, and it had more girth than the 2 fingers she had been using, so it forced her open as she thrust it into her, which was stimulating all the nerve endings in the wall of her gaping watu as it suffered from being teased with the smell of a meal it had long been denied, but was now being forced to dine on rubber after the waft of an elegantly topped pizza had taunted the taste buds for hours, which left little room for finding reward as it forced its way past muscles that had been denied its requests over the past couple of years and recently been disturbed from its slumber by the promise and hope of something better. Within no time she was back at the same state she had been at only moments before, but now could keep going a little longer as she could switch hands back and forth to allow her arms to rest, but still keep the stimulation up and not need to stop, and just kept climbing and could feel the juices splashing out of her all over her hand and running down her ass. Everything was so wet and slippery she could not believe this was reality, because this had never happened before, nor had the level of excitement she was now hitting, and her whole body wanted to explode, but everything just kept exciting her more and bringing her farther up the mountain, but the view of the peak kept getting further away. Every bit of stimulation made her muscles firm up more and her whole body wanted to seize up and stop moving, but she had to move. Had to pull her lover out and then jam it back in because of the ache for that release, and to let everything go and feel that warm relaxation wash over her, which is why she kept up her desperate determination. From wanting it so bad, she could feel her muscles tighten around her lover with each thrust becoming harder than the last, but it felt so good. Then she collapsed onto the bed, awaking the next morning feeling groggy, and as the fog cleared the night before came back to her what had that been about, there had never been a problem getting herself off, but even with the use of the toy she had still been unable to finish. Feeling dirty, realized a shower was needed as she rolled to get out of bed. There was a weird feeling, and when she reached found she had slept the whole night with her lover inside, which surprisingly was a bit difficult to remove because muscles were snuggled down onto it. Then as she pulled it out, an electric jolt shot through her, riveting her whole body. When she got to the bathroom she noticed in the mirror that her nipples were rock hard and wondered if they had been like that all night or just after removing her lover and having that wonderful sensation rip through her. As the water hit her skin felt electrified and stimulatory, but other senses and urges were starting to kick in. She was famished and figured her energy reserves were depleted, which meant a healthy but filling brunch. As she sat eating, all she could think was what was wrong with her. Even eating was erotic and arousing. She got lewd thoughts while eating breadsticks dipped in honey. The banana sent her mind to every corner of sexual erotica, and then when she started eating grapes, the thoughts she got in regards to that were just too much. How come eating was now sexual? Her mind started mulling over the events of the previous evening. She had seen him, then approached him, they spoke, then he had gotten her to watch the video. The video, that must be it, but how was it doing all this and even associating it with breakfast? It was far too much to believe or take in, but she decided to watch it again and see what she noticed. Now, she sat down at her computer and downloaded the video, then full screened it and sat back to watch. Up came the images accompanied by the music, and she was watching again, but more closely this time. At first nothing was impactful, but then at about 20 seconds into the video there was a banana. So she started watching far more intently for anything else that might jump out at her, but there was nothing else that she seen that would associate food with sex. Wondering if maybe she missed something, she replayed the video, watching very analytically for anything that might explain her current situation and help her to better understand, but nothing was apparent. Having no agenda and nothing better to do, she went online and started researching seduction, which only served to add to her confusion, as underlying everything it seemed to be abusive, and even the reputed master Neil Strauss, who was proclaimed to be the pick-up artist extraordinaire, was telling you to abuse as part of his tactics, the only difference being his were more subtle and used more coaxing and gentle prodding than the direct confrontational bullying tactics of others, but this only served to add to her confusion in all her examining of hers and dad's interaction. She could not see abuse, and the only real identifiable instance she could think of was he said no, but he was not abusive in any of this. He was soft and gentle, a pleasure to be with and a stimulating partner for conversation and companionship, not to mention everything else he had stimulated without even touching her. Then she remembered him saying the video was to relax her. Had he hypnotized her and she was responding to his suggestive commands? But how? That series of pictures, the words. Again she watched the video, but this time focusing on what the words presented. Longing, challenges ahead, want it, pay attention, sex kitten, look, submit, obey, surrender, obedience, worship, enjoy, comply, okay, do not resist, what, worship, desire, need to please, instructions. You love how it tastes, lust, masturbate, yes you can. Okay, some of this might fit but some did not, and how did it affect her so heavily and also quickly? She felt the need to watch it again. Longing, warning, let yourself, want it, freedom, sex kitten, anything goes, stop resisting, look, yes, submit, listen now, surrender, relax, obedience, what if, worship, enjoy, comply, pay attention, no will to resist, do not resist, you belong on your knees, what, worship, you are a slave, submit, cooperate, submit, desire, longing, good, need to please. Instructions, no, lust, enjoy, masturbate, yes you can. That's similar but not the same, and still did not add up to everything she was going through. Suddenly her phone rang and she answered to find Dad calling. They agreed to go out and then to dinner. He would be over to meet her shortly. Hopping off the phone and into the shower, no time to bathe now, only a quick shave. She emerged a short time later and almost immediately the phone rang, buzzing for her door. Running to grab the phone, then told him it would be unlocked and buzzed him in before flying into her bedroom and covering herself with a robe while seeking an attire for the day, which consisted of a pair of jeans, and was just picking the shirt when Dad announced he was there. "I am just dressing and will be out soon. May I inquire what you are wearing?" "Pants and a shirt." "May I suggest you switch that to a long loose skirt and a loose lightweight top, the day is rather hot." "Thanks for the advice, but it's you who has to wait. That's only a few more minutes and the rest will still take the same amount of time, so it's not that big of a deal." "Okay, I am taking your advice." As she changed, she playfully started throwing her discarded garments out her bedroom door. A few minutes later she emerged with light makeup, a long frilly light skirt and a top so thin you could make out every detail of her lace bra. She set her purse on the table and joined him on the couch. "Where are we going first?" "Well, from what I can tell you have already finished your 5 minutes on your own, so we need to go to the dollar store and then to the park for a walk." "Finished my 5 minutes on my own?" "Yeah, I said it would only take 5 minutes and it seems you have done the rest of it alone." OMG, what did he know? How did he know? 5 minutes. Going to be difficult about this. Fine. We may as well go. Okay. She grabbed her purse, slid her feet into her shoes and locked the door behind them. They made it the couple of blocks to the dollar store and wandered in, then that veered right for the toy section, then proceeded to grab 2 bags of marbles and headed straight to the checkout to pay for them before going back outside. Once there he stopped, crouched down and set the bag before him on the ground. Then reached in with both hands to rummage around, and Sonia could only guess that he opened the bags of marbles. He then appeared to slip a few in his pocket, then stood up, lifted the bag against the wall of the store and turned and walked away. She was caught off guard and had to hurry to catch up with him. "Why did you want marbles if you were going to leave them there?" "I did not." "You did not what?" "I did not leave them there." "Yes you did, I seen you." "I have the marbles I wanted, I left the ones I did not want so some other can enjoy them." "Oh." She began to wonder to herself, why did he want marbles, where were they going and what were the marbles for? "What are you doing with the marbles?" "You will see soon enough." "I will see." "What? Is he going to run them over my body? Roll them under his hand as it caresses me? Or was this just some massage form? Or something else altogether? When will I see?" "Now that I am sure you are ready as soon as you get the chance." They had hit the edge of the park. He veered onto the roadway heading for the largest populated area in the park and not the remote region she expected, so as they trudged along slowly the number of people around them grew steadily. Then they were in a large common area where everything met. "Just give me a minute while I run to the washroom." "Sure." She slipped off to the side while he headed to the building that housed the bathroom facilities, and then he returned moments later. They headed off back into the park. After walking for many minutes he veered off the common path and walked towards a stand of trees. After reaching it he stopped to listen for several seconds, and Sonia listened also, but all she could hear was the sounds of distant voices off in various directions but none close by. Dad then continued on along the edge of the thicket until he reached this one tree, and then he cut into the forest. A short time later they came to a small clearing and he walked over to a log on the one side and sat down. How do you know of this place? I come here from time to time. HMMPPFFF. So now she was just one amongst many others, but how did the marbles fit in? It's a nice spot and cozy. Yeah, as long as it's not discovered by a lot of others. What do you usually come here for? It's the most remote yet private part of the park I can find, so it offers the best seclusion and relaxation. So you usually come here alone? Yeah. He did not bring her here to add her to a list of others in that regard, so why were they here? What is our purpose here? My, aren't you anxious and impatient? Well, we were just here to relax and talk, but seeing as you are so anxious, you may as well take this. He then handed her a piece of paper towel with something in it. She unwrapped it to find 2 marbles, each about the size of a pinball. What am I to do with these? Stick them inside yourself, it's why they are wrapped. I washed them in the bathroom. In me where? They strike you as something good to chew, do they? No. Then where else can you stick them? You mean my smuggler's cavern? Yes. Well, this was not what she expected, but it also did not seem too bad. Why should she worry about sticking a couple marbles inside her? But also, why did he want her to right now? Yes. She stood up and hiked up the front of her skirt and then slid her hand into her panties, 1 marble between her fingers and the other held in her palm with one of her other fingers. After getting past the initial folds, she found herself rather wet, and they both popped into her easily, one after the other, with her pushing the second one deep to make sure they both were well up inside her, and as they had forced her open to gain access, they created pleasure and rewarding stimulation across every nerve they encountered. She then looked, and he was watching her intently and not liking the situation or the awkward silence. She asked him, "What did you mean when you said I had finished alone?" "I tried using your computer while I was waiting, but found it was already busy with other projects." OMG, she had been looking at the video and had run off to shower, and the power saver had kicked in, so the screen was blank until he woke it up. She figured she flushed another 5,000 shades of red in that instance, so he knew she was watching the video. OMG, that was why he said going to be difficult. He knew. He was just playing with her. Maybe he was going to take her here. Maybe he was going to try something, maybe he had a plan. Then it struck her how good it had felt sticking those marbles in her, and she did not care that he had been watching. Oh, this was all getting very strange. Even stranger was that no matter how strange it got, it always had a level of comfort and joy that was slightly higher and was there waiting for her to embrace and escape any fear or nervousness caused by any other factor. Then she realized she was standing there and he was still watching her. What are we supposed to do now? Whatever we like until we go for dinner, but one thing, if you drop your marbles you will be punished, and if you do it away from me you have to tell me. Punished? What was he talking about? Punished? What does that mean? You will find out if you want to, or you will not find out if you do not want to. Great, nice straight answer. Now what does that mean? Just what was said. Okay, so what will happen? Think about the statement. Damn, he could be infuriating at times, but now as she gazed upon him she noticed she was getting those tingles and her ecstasy enabler was starting to flutter slightly. She dropped her gaze to the ground. Can we go for a stroll? We can start to head in the direction of the restaurant at any time, or we can wander around for a bit if you have a different agenda. I think I would like to wander the park for a few minutes. Realizing she was not ready just yet to sit at the table and stare at his face, she opted to take a walk while she composed herself. Where shall we head? I like the tranquility of what we just had but would like to be walking while enjoying it. With that she headed back out the direction he had used to get there and then waited for him to break into the open ground before taking his hand, then turning to wander some of the less used paths of the park. After they had wandered in silence for a few minutes, Thad turned to her. Do you frequent the remote trails often? Whenever I come. Why so? I deal with people all the time. It's nice to go and enjoy other parts of life and take from them what you can. Nice perspective. It's been the only companionship I have had to enjoy, so I have embraced it also. You have been busy sharing yourself with and embracing knowledge, but it looks like you are almost ready for some human interaction. Maybe he was going to ravage her tonight. The mere thought of a possibility for coupling set her loins quivering. I was ready last night. You were ready for sex. We need to break down all the barriers so that the other possibilities can be fully enjoyed. Making a girl orgasm is easy. It's making a girl want to orgasm from your stimulation that the chore, just as it's easy to fall in love but hard to find someone to catch you. How long will that take? You are almost ready and will be ready soon. Soon. Then you will horizontally test me tonight. I doubt you will be ready by then, besides you have not even started working on the current possibilities. What are they? You need to start doing clenching exercises. Clenching. Yeah. What do you think those marbles are for? I do not understand. You cannot clench your muscles. I am not sure what you mean. Okay, think of this. You are at home and you have just spent the day experiencing a very exciting encounter which you cannot get out of your mind. Finally you cannot stand it anymore, so you head for a rubber lover you have. She was sure she went 5,000 shades of red again. After you get it, you take your clothes off and position yourself in the most rewarding position. Unable to wait and finding yourself soaking wet, you figure this is going to be an easy task, but as you start to force this flap divider into yourself, you only get about a half an inch and then your wanton muscles clamp down as tight as they can on the stimulating invader. He tightens his fist in a squeezing manner to emphasize this point and demonstrate the muscles constricting around the inserted item. Then you decide to withdraw and try again, but as you get in about the same distance you get the same response and are unable to make it any farther. Clenching is when your muscles clamp around anything inside you or going into you, or you work to exercise your muscles so they will be stronger to achieve this task. And again he closed his fist for emphasis. Do you understand now? Yes. Okay, so then you need to keep clenching your muscles until you feel them grasp those marbles inside you. And no, I am not saying keep squeezing continually. I am saying try and squeeze as tight as you can, then hold for a second, then release and repeat. Eventually you will be able to grab those marbles. How long will this take? That depends on you. Each person is different. I imagine some can do it right away while others have to train for a bit, just like any other muscle in the body that has to be strengthened. Explain this to me again. Try to envision you clenching your muscles down as much and as tight as you can to grasp and capture anything inserted into you. Hold for a second, then let go and relax. Repeat. Okay, I'll try. She started trying to tighten up her muscles and clench them down on the marbles as she envisioned making a fist inside herself, but could not feel anything other than her muscles constricting. But held for a few seconds, then released, waited a bit and tried again. Then deciding maybe this is not something to be working on while walking and needed to be sitting, when should I be trying to do this? Whenever you have time, can manage or think of it. Does it matter what I am doing? No. I can do it at any time and it will be the same. For the most part the exercise you are giving yourself will be the same, but you may receive changes due to position of the body which make it feel different, and I have no specific requirements about. When you choose to do it, the agenda is for you to be able to clamp down and feel the marbles. She then began trying again, but still only achieving the same result. Quickly she became annoyed and frustrated, which helped her decide she wanted to sit down then try. We should head towards the restaurant now. Sure. Where are we headed? A nutritional and healthy eatery a few blocks over. When they arrived, she noticed the sayings in the window were all healthy or positive and included words like invigorating, stimulating, energetic, and many other statements geared towards healthy living and lifestyle. After they were seated and he was scanning the room, she began trying to clench again while she was seated and did not have to focus on walking, but it did not change the fact she could not squeeze enough to feel anything. Then wondered if she was doing it right, maybe she was clenching wrong. Trying to remember what he had said about the prosthetic male and clenching, then suddenly she was thinking about waking up with her rubber lover inside her and how she was clamped right down on it as she pulled it out of her. But how to recreate that, and how did he know to mention it? She was sure she turned 5,000 shades of red again, but now she was thinking about how that had felt and how she could recreate it, and then the memory of the electrical shock wave running through her came back and she felt her muscles convulse and contract, but it felt different, and with this in mind she began trying to make her muscles tighten like that, but now on command. Realizing she had been lost in thought, then looking to see what Dad was doing, only to discover he was watching her closely. Sorry if I am being rude. You seemed like you were preoccupied with something and I figured I should wait and let you complete your thought. I was trying to figure out if there was different ways to clench or only one. What have you decided? If you had strength and control, there may be different ways. Wow, you are quick. I doubt most ever realize that and only figure out one means of doing it, but you can make many shapes from a circle, therefore as long as you do not break it you can bend it to many forms, and the only place your love tunnel is not a circle is at the back. So the easiest will be in the way my muscles already work. Exactly. I just have to figure that out. The waitress showed up and they ordered drinks but said they needed time to decide. She returned quickly with drinks and said she would come back shortly for the food demands. Sonia began focusing on trying to clench her muscles again, no longer worried about doing it right but rather figuring out what was easiest for her to do. She was also scanning the menu at the same time and quickly settled on a pasta dish that sounded too good to be true. She then folded her menu and looked to see what Dad was doing. He was highly engrossed in his menu, so she returned to the contemplation of clenching her muscles, then decided needed to figure out exactly how to clench her muscles. She began to contemplate what that would feel like, and when she finally decided, she figured she should try that. Now as she clenched her muscles she could feel her insides tighten and constrict, gathering towards the middle of her being. Which felt right, but was she doing it to the maximum of her personal potential? Now she needed to know and excused herself to head to the bathroom, where she found an empty stall and hiked her skirt, then dropped her panties to sit down. She then inserted a finger inside her and tried repeating what she had just done at the table, and yes, it felt like she had tightened down towards the finger. She also felt like she had stretched away, as if the rear of her female cave had been retreating from the invader. She decided to ignore that part and tried a few more times to squeeze down on her finger. Yes, she was doing it, and now she knew what to practice, but the thought that she was fingering herself in the washroom left her feeling dirty and also excited her. She righted herself, washed her hands and returned to the table. Dad's menu was lying down closed, and as she seated herself at the table, the waitress returned to take their order. She got shrimp for her cocktail, a salad and pasta for her meal. Dad ordered a salad along with a fish platter. The waitress gathered their menus and left feeling better. Sonia: yes, I think I figured out how to clench. You were off fingering yourself in the washroom. Another 5,000 shades of red as she asked, why do you say that? You no longer have the contemplative look or the focus of concentration, so it would seem you have drawn a conclusion. Yes, I went to see if I could squeeze my finger but could only feel my muscles move inward, not actually grabbing my finger. It is often said that knowing is half the battle. You have moved forward quickly. But how long is this going to take? It will happen when you are ready. I feel I am ready now, and it would feel good to have something inside me and have to think that I would have no problem tightening around it. Alas, I am just a man and will never know that part of it. Ha, just a man. Other men do not conduct themselves as you do. They do not ask for or say the things you have, nor do they avoid climbing into bed with the woman they left the bar with. There we have it, you are a woman scorned. I am not scorned, just in disbelief and also curious, maybe partly wondering if you are. A great salesman with a pretty package, but once you open it there is not a lot inside. It all depends on who is looking as to what is seen. I will just have to wait and see what that is. Yes, you will. But will I like what I see? It will be as rewarding as you find it, and most likely will be just what you are looking for. What do I want? Only you can truly answer that. I wanted you to stay over last night, but I did not see that. If you could have something for an instance or a lifetime, which is better? One you can have quickly, but the other you have to work for. This made sense in a strange way, but she would have to examine it more later. For now, she was busy with keeping up her side of the conversation and working on clenching her muscles. Just then the waitress arrived with her cocktail and their salad, so she began tasting her food and enjoying its flavor, thus diverting further conversation. For the moment the food is wonderful and has amazing flavor. I enjoy this place very much and thought it would be a good place to get better acquainted. She had only finished her salad by a minute when their main courses arrived after they were done and the plates cleared. A dessert menu was brought over. Dad refused but insisted she go ahead. She chose a chocolate cake with enticing sounding toppings and returned to her clenching while she engaged him once again. What is the agenda for the rest of the evening? We have now reached the end of my pre-planned ideas, but I do have suggestions. Such as? Well, foremost was to walk to the canal, along it, then swing over the bridge and cut to the core to experience the downtown nightlife. That sounds perfect and should be great for digesting the meal. Then we have a plan. Her cake arrived just then and she began to consume it, surprised at how appealing its flavor was, but stopping to ask Dad if he wished to try a bite, as to which he declined. After she finished her cake, Thad paid the bill and they headed out for their planned excursion. Their choice of path was mostly solitary and they began to feel isolated and alone on their course this evening, which served to bring them closer together, relax and enjoy each other that much